Welcome to Greek for a Week. I'm glad that you are continuing with us this week in our study in the book of First Thessalonians. If you'll notice, we are looking at verses 11 and 12 of chapter 2, which will complete this paragraph, chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. So next week, we will be diagramming the second half of this particular paragraph, verses 8 through 12. And this will basically, what this paragraph does is this paragraph, again, as I've stated before, it provides for us as one who looks into the church at Thessalonica. It provides for us just exactly how Paul ministers to this church of Thessalonica. It's his example. And what's interesting is throughout this example, we not only see the heartbeat of Paul, but we see, I would suggest, a pattern, a way that we too can do our ministries. So let's go ahead and translate verses 11 and 12, and then I'll point out a few things, and then next week we'll diagram. So verse 11, he states, just as you know how we were exhorting you and encouraging and testifying to each one of you as a father does his own children. For what purpose? So that you would walk worthy of God, the one who called you into his own kingdom and glory. So if you'll notice, there's a few participles in verse 11. There's three of them actually. You have the first one, parakaluntes. Parakaluntes. Present active participle, plural, nominative, masculine of parakaleo. And I'll explain their function in a minute. The next one is paramuthumenoi. This one is a present middle participle, plural, nominative, masculine. And the last one is marturomenoi. This participle is very similar to the one preceding it, present middle participle, plural, nominative, masculine. Now, these three participles, you can take these, I think, a couple of ways. You can take them as participles of manner, in which they are explaining how Paul proclaimed the gospel of God, which is what he states in verse 9. So that's an option. In other words, how are we proclaiming this gospel? Well, we are doing it by exhorting, by encouraging, and by testifying. Or you can look at them as circumstantial participles and probably include the word while. So just as you know how or while we were exhorting, encouraging, and testifying. I tend to lean a little bit more towards the participle of manner. I think they are describing how, I think that's the key phrase there, how Paul proclaimed the gospel of God from verse 9. So I do think these participles are in reference to the proclamation of verse 9. Then we jump down to verse 12, and you have an ace ta. Here's a construction here. You have an ace ta plus an infinitive. Your infinitive is the peripatein, the ain ending there. That would be a purpose construction. In other words, again, you could go all the way back to verse 9. What is the purpose for Paul proclaiming the gospel? And then you could say, how is he doing that? And then here are the participles to explain how. And then you have for what purpose here, so that ultimately they would walk in a worthy manner of God. The two kaluntas here, this is your adjectival participle. It's a present active participle, singular genitive, masculine of kaleo, and it is attributing a quality to God. So you have the genitive case here, the genitive case article, and then you have the genitive case ending here. So each of those are referencing one another. You could say that they are modifying one another. And then you have lastly the ace tain, how to, basile an kai doxon. I would say that entire prepositional phrase would be for the purpose of. So it's interesting that you could almost say that the major purpose of this entire paragraph is so that they would walk worthy of God. Okay? Again, and he wants them to walk worthy of God, and he's called them for the purpose of one day sharing in the kingdom and the glory that is his. Again, hope that's been helpful. That's verses 11 and 12 of chapter 2, 1 Thessalonians. We'll see you next week.